And my scripture today is from the Lanza translation of the Bible, Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 21. And when they came to the people, a man approached him and fell on his knees and said to him, "My Lord, have mercy on me. My son is an epileptic and has become worse. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they were not able to heal him." Jesus answered, saying, "O faithless and crooked generation, how long shall I be with you? And how long shall I preach to you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked him, and the demon went out of him, and the boy was healed from that very hour. Then the disciples came up to Jesus when he was alone and said to him, "Why could we not heal him?" And Jesus said to them, "Because of your unbelief. For truly, I say to you, if there is faith in you, even as a grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move away from here,' and it will move away, and nothing would prevail over you. Nevertheless, this kind does not come out except by fasting and prayer." Thus ends the reading of our scripture, Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 21. And again, I say to you, good morning on this beautiful Sunday day, Sunday in August. Our scripture lesson teaches us about the faith of a mustard seed. The master teacher tells his disciples, if only they have the faith of a tiny, tiny little mustard seed, they will be able to tell the mountain to move away, and it will. All we need is a little faith. Now, before I go any further, I want to back up for a minute. And I want to back up to the sermon lessons taught by Reverend Fabienne and Reverend Jackson the past 2 Sundays. For those who may not recall, or if you weren't with us those days, Reverend Fabienne spoke about changes, and Reverend Jackson spoke about the dark nights of the soul. It is when we lean into our faith, leaning into our faith, that we make it through these tunnels of change and transformation. Change and evolution, they're a part of life. And we won't evolve unless we experience change. Change is occurring every day. It occurs on a global level. It occurs on a personal level. And it's occurring within us. That's why we're here. We are here to evolve as the collective consciousness of humanity. And we are here to evolve on an individual soul level. When we think of change, sometimes we think of it as an ending. Perhaps an ending of a relationship, a job, a loved one making their transition, or perhaps relocating to another state. Change comes in many packages. Some changes are not of our own choosing. And when we are faced with these changes, the uncertainty of it, of how they're going to affect our lives, can become pretty uncomfortable. It's during these times when we benefit from turning to our friend faith. Our initial reaction may be to let fear creep in. Concerned and worried. How are we going to make it through? How are we going to deal with this change? And then what happens? Our mind begins this internal dialogue that can lead us way down this path that we don't want to go. So it's up to us to direct the script. It can take us down roads that we don't want to travel. And that's when we invite our friend Faith. We invite our friend Faith to step in with just a tiny, tiny bit of faith. We can redirect the script and the narrative, assuring ourselves that whatever it is, we will get through it. Not only will we get through it, but faith reminds us to look at change perhaps through a different lens. Change is a new beginning. Change is evolution, and change is growth. Faith encourages us to look forward rather than backwards. We create the internal dialogue that we are in the divine flow, and we trust the outcome is for our highest and greatest good. Now, last week, Reverend Jackson spoke about the dark nights of the soul. When we are experiencing the dark nights of the soul, we turn to God to shine the light to help us get through this tunnel. Because what is a tunnel? A tunnel is that space of change. We're not here and we're not there. And we are vulnerable. And it is during these times, of the dark nights of the soul, when our soul is bare and naked. And that's one of the times that we find the true depth of our faith. We dig so deep within ourselves and we discover this amazing strength, leaning even harder into our faith to get us through this tunnel, knowing that the light is on the other side and it will even be better. And when we make it through these changes, and when we come through the other side of the tunnel, we realize how strong we are and how much we have grown. Remember what I said earlier. Change is growth. Change is evolution. I too have been going through some challenges. And at first, I felt like a ship without a rudder, drifting off at sea into the great abyss. I dug deep, and I reminded myself that I needed to make sure that I was anchored to God. And in that space, I assured myself that I could and I would get through it. And I invited my friend Faith. I invited Faith to come in, trusting and knowing. And I felt this comfort that I would get through it. I would get through it, and I trusted that all was in divine order. And through it all, I grew even stronger, trusting divine flow. Our faith can get us through change, the dark nights of the soul, and challenges. But our faith can also help us create the world we want to live in. We can create our heaven right here on earth, if only we believe. The master teacher reminded us that if we have faith, all we have to do is say to the mountain to move away, and it'll move. We attune ourselves to the God within during our meditation so we may listen and hear that small inner voice to guide us to create and manifest the life and experiences we desire. And once we figure out what it is we want, again, it's time to invite our friend Faith over for a visit. Otherwise, those little unwanted neighbors called doubt and fear may come to visit instead. Faith. Faith will help us to create and realize our soul's truest desires. And faith tells us that if we set our intent on something, we can and we will do it. James chapter 2, verse 17 says, even so, by itself, faith without works is dead. What is this saying? It's teaching us that faith is a belief until it is tested and tried. And once it is tested and tried, it goes from being a belief to becoming a knowing that deep within our soul, we can and we always will get through whatever we are facing, and that we can and will climb any mountain we set our sights on. We can create heaven right here on earth, and we can attain that Christ level of consciousness as the man Jesus did. All we need is the faith of a mustard seed and the conviction to follow through and do the work. Verse 21 in Matthew says, nevertheless, this kind does not come out except by fasting and prayer. The master teacher, he's telling us that to have unwavering faith, we have to fast. Fasting doesn't mean depriving ourselves of food. Fasting means to deny ourselves of error thinking. We have to fast and eliminate that error thinking, doubt and fear and whatever else it is, and instead pray and believe. To hold on to the knowing that we can and will attain whatever we seek, leaving absolutely no room for doubt. Faith keeps us in the divine flow. We lean on our faith when we are vulnerable, and we trust and know that what we are going through will be for our highest and greatest good, and that it will make us stronger. Faith reminds us that we can climb to the top of the highest mountain, and we can create our heaven right here on earth. All we need is the faith of a tiny, tiny little mustard seed. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. Many blessings to you. Namaste.